Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video where I'm going to teach you how to provide global access from the internet from the cloud to a local service that you might be running on your machine. And what do I mean with that? So for example, let's imagine that you have a very simple website that you are running and hosting on your machine on a local computer, and you may want to give it access to anyone online to check your website. Or you are running an installation of Olama, or you want to provide access to LLMs that are running on your machine to other people on the cloud. So how do you actually do that? The most common and the easiest way to do that is using what's called a tunneling solution, and that looks like something like this. So I have a little server running on my machine that is providing access to a really bare bones website that I created, but it's hosted locally in a test server folder here on my machine. So this address right now is only valid for machines that are living on my network. But if I want to make this publicly available from the cloud, I can use a tunneling solution, like in this case, ngrok, that I'm going to use to serve an HTTP server that is hosted on this port 56022 right now on my machine. And the moment I do that, I am provided with a global URL, and this URL that has been forwarded to my local machine. Anyone now from anywhere in the world, from anywhere on the cloud, using this tunneled URL will be able to get access to the local service that I had forwarded that service to. In this case, a little website, but again, it could be a local API, it could be an LLM that you're running locally, etc., etc. Why is this a good solution? Why do we use tunneling instead of other things? That I'm going to explain as soon as I start setting things up and getting you ready to do this on your own. So let's dive in. Let's get started. So before we actually get into tunneling and how it works and why are we doing this, let's create a simple project that we want to wrap on a server and that we're going to be using to serve globally through the internet. All right. So what I've done here is I have created a little folder that I'm calling test server, and then we have an index.html because I intend to make a very small, simple website that is going to be running locally from my machine. So here I have some simple HTML that I've created for this website. And if I now take this website and the index.html and I drop it on my browser, then I can read my local file from my browser. However, if I want to serve this website to anyone in the rest of my network or somewhere in the cloud, what I need to do is I need to provide access to this file through a local server. There are several ways we can do that. So one of them is, for example, in Visual Studio Code, I have installed a small extension that is called Live Server that is very popular for development. It's this one here. And the moment you install it, you basically get a tiny button all the way down here. So now I can press Go Live, and then the HTML that I have will be open on a browser, and I have a little local server. You can see I can access through my local IP index.html, and if I make any changes like blah 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 and I save the file, the server restarts and serves the updated file. Okay, so that's great. The other way I can do that so that I don't have to have Visual Studio open is I'm going to shut this down. The other way is if you have Node.js installed, which if you don't know what this is, I have a video on how to do this, so there will be a link popping up in the corner of this video. So if you have Node.js installed, what you can do is you can go to the folder where you are, you can open a terminal on this folder, and then once in the folder you can type npx serve, and then what this will do is that it will download a tiny module that will serve a local server based on whichever folder you are. So so this server will open. I said this really terribly. This npx server will basically create a server that will serve files that are in the folder that I just created. So you can see that the localhost 6429, so that means is that if I now do 127.0.0.0.1 and then what was it? 264.290, what I'm doing is I just got access to a local server running here on the terminal, and that is providing access to the browser, in this case, to the files that are living in this folder. All right. And actually, if I reload, you can see that I get here some feedback of who is connecting, from where they are connecting, etc., etc. So it's nice to see who are the incoming connections. Okay. So beautiful. So now I have a local server that is serving my website. All right. So I'm going to do it here. I'm going to keep this tab open, and I'm not going to do it through Visual Studio Code. I'm actually going to close Visual Studio Code at this time. Beautiful. What that means is this website is running from a local server. What that also means is that any computer that is in my local network, in this case, my studio where I do the recording, I have a router. So any other computer that lives in my same network could just type on their browser the IP of this computer, which I actually don't know which one it is, ipconfig, ipconfig all, and then the IP is, what is the Ethernet? So this would be my local IP. So if any computer types my local IP and then the port that we are using, which it was 64290, any other computer from my local network will be able to access this website that is served with my local server. And you can see that now the request is coming from a different machine, and technically I could do this with my phone, which is connected to my local network, from any other laptop that I have in my local network, which is great. So I can provide now access to any machine from my local network to this server. However, the problem is if I want to provide access to this server from any other machine that is not in my local network, I have a bit of a problem. The problem is the machines inside of my local network can easily see each other because they all have local IPs within the local network that I am, in this case, my studio. However, when all those computers want to communicate with the external world, with the bigger cloud of things, they all get the same IP, a public IP that is assigned by my internet provider and that is managed by the router that is managing the local network. What that means is that if anyone from the outside wants to talk to a machine that lives in my local network, they don't have access to their local IP. They can only see their public IP. And then if they try to access my machine from my local IP, the router doesn't know to which machine inside of my local network to deliver that request. So the way around this is basically you can do this thing called port forwarding. So if you have a if you have a device or if you have a router that you can configure manually, something that you can do is you can write a table on your router and say, if the port of a particular request that is coming from the outside is on my table, forward that port to this computer or this computer or this computer. And what you basically do is like pipe out those requests with a particular port. However, that requires having a router where you can do that, also requires getting into the router. It's also tricky because the public IP that your internet provider may give you might change over time. So in other words, the solution is not straightforward. It depends on the hardware that you have, and it's time sensitive. It might fail over time because your internet provider might give you a different public IP. So a very common solution, and the one that I'm going to show you in this video today, it's called tunneling. Tunneling is basically a way of setting up your local network in a way that is connected to some third-party service that is providing the tunneling. And therefore, when the third-party server is given data from your local network, what they can do is that they can generate a temporary or a permanent URL that then any remote client can use to connect. And then the third party basically knows where on your local network to send those requests to. In a strange way, the concept is basically very similar to doing port forwarding, but instead of having the ports configured at the hardware level of your router, you basically have some kind of third-party service that lives on the cloud, making that bouncing of data, making that connection, and being the middle person, if you will, between external requests that are coming from the cloud and how to redirect those requests to particular local servers that have been configured under this tunneling logic. Okay? Well, so if that wasn't clear, maybe Google this, check some videos, ask ChatGPT. I don't know. But it's a very simple, very easy solution. And because there is a third-party server that is outside of the local network, that is the one handling this communication, then the third-party service is the one that is in charge of figuring out if your local IPs have changed, etc., etc. So it's so it's a very good way and very resilient way of doing this. So what I would like to do is, in this video, I'm going to teach you how to do tunneling with three very popular services: Visual Studio Code, ngrok, and Cloudflare. All right, so let's dive into it. And before we move on, I just want to say that Victor just shared this diagram with me for explaining what a tunnel is, and I think it's a little clearer than the one that I was using. You see, an external computer trying to access a local network will probably be blocked by the firewall, and the router will have issues figuring out where this request should be redirected to which machine. So what we basically do is, using tunneling, you have a third-party server that uses a particular URL that they issue, and then they know that whatever comes through this URL should be redirected through the tunnel, something that you need to configure locally on your end, and then reach a particular machine with a particular service running on that machine. So this is what we're going to do, and actually one of the examples that I'm going to use is going to be using ngrok. All right, let's take a look at this. The first method that I'm going to teach you is using Visual Studio Code. Turns out that Visual Studio Code has a very nice one-click, very fast, no friction kind of way of setting this up, right? So what you can do is you can open Visual Studio, and I'm actually going to go ahead and drop the folder here just to make sure that I have access to the files. And then what I'm going to do is, here on the lower part of the terminal, there is a tab that is called ports. I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of small in my window. So with ports, what you can do is, here you can virtually forward a port using tunneling services. So what you do here is you click add a port, and then you need to write what is the port that you want to forward. In this case, it was 6429, the one that was provided to me by the npx serve. And then when I do that, I just click enter. I'm going to right click here and change port visibility to public, because if I don't do that, then the service is going to ask me for GitHub credentials, and it's only me who can use it anyway. But then, very interestingly, the service already gives me this URL that I can copy by clicking on this clipboard icon, and then that URL is a URL that anyone from anywhere in the cloud can use to access my local service. So what you're going to see is that the moment I click enter, here we're going to get a request. You saw that request here. We're going to get a request from the internet, from the global access network that just redirected to my local server. And this is a link that I could now share with anyone in the world, and that they could use to access which service I might be using here. All right. So this solution is really good, it's very fast, it's great for development because it literally is just 2 or 3 clicks. You don't have to install anything. Everything comes out of the box with Visual Studio Code, and it's a service that is provided by Microsoft for free. So it's great for development. But it's not so great if you want a more permanent solution, because first of all, you don't have a lot of control over the ports, the URL, and none of that. And at the same time, it requires that you keep Visual Studio Code open. If I shut Visual Studio Code, then this service is not going to work anymore. All right, the URL is particular. This URL basically vanishes. So if you want more of a permanent solution, something that you can turn on a computer and just leave it there, something that is solutions that are terminal based typically are more useful. So for that matter, I'm going to teach you now how to use ngrok as a service to do the exact same operation. So what is ngrok in the first place? I honestly don't know how would I define the ngrok as a company. I would say that they provide network services. I don't know. It's basically cloud infrastructure services, sign on, APIs. I honestly really don't know. I don't know the breadth and the depth of all the work that they do, but I know that they're very popular as a tunneling solution. So the way we set up ngrok is the following. So first of all, you sign up for an account. I already did that. So once you go into your account and you log in, the first thing that shows up is setup and installation. And you have a lot of different agents depending on the system that you're working with. I am on a Windows machine, so the way I'm going to install it is different than if you're in a Mac, if you're in Linux, or if you are doing this on a Raspberry Pi, which is also a very common use case scenario. So in the case of Windows, there are two ways you can install ngrok on your system. There is the package manager way, which is using Chocolatey, which I dislike completely. So if you are a Choco person, then you can do it this way and you're going to be fine. But I'm going to teach you how to do it the manual way, which also it's interesting because now you know and you understand how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the Windows application. I'm going to download it on my desktop, and then I have it right here. And if I double click, you see that I have this one file called ngrok.exe. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my main hard drive. In this case is C. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it ngrok. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract this file. I'm going to extract it into this folder called ngrok. Depending on your Windows configuration, you may have to set up administration privileges and give permissions and blah, blah, blah. And also, I strongly recommend if you are on Windows that you do not use the native Windows unzipper, because what this does is that it puts these flags and these blocks on executable files that you've downloaded from the internet, and you may not be able to use this. So I recommend that you use some third-party extractor tool. Like in this case, I'm using 7-zip. Okay, so I just extracted this file, and just to make sure that everything is working, so I'm going to open a terminal here and I'm going to type ngrok, and I can see that I can run the service no problem. I don't have any blocks, I don't have antivirus, firewall protection, any of that standard stuff that Windows sometimes does. The second thing you may need to do is you need to run this configuration file to add a security token to your system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to open a terminal here, right? And then from that terminal, I'm just going to paste the authentication and this authentication token to my local configuration. And the last thing that I need to do is I need to make sure that this ngrok daemon, this ngrok agent, is available from anywhere. So for example, if I now go here to this folder, which is not the folder where I installed ngrok, and I type ngrok, it just shows up, but it shows up because it is using an old. So if I open a new one, it will not. Oh, it does. Well, it does because I actually, for the recording of this video, I already had it configured. I deleted it and it may not have updated. But the way you need to do is you need to actually make sure that this service is available on the global path of your system. What that means is I'm going to right click on this PC. I'm going to click on properties. And here I'm going to ask for environment variables. And I'm going to edit the environment variables. I'm going to go to environment variables, and then all the way here in system variables, you will have a file called path, which if you double click, you basically have a list of default folders that whenever you type any instruction on your terminal, what Windows will do is it will try to find if that instruction is anywhere available in any of the folders that you have on your system. And the reason why it was working is because I actually deleted this ngrok, but I guess it didn't save it. So I am actually going to go ahead and go to the path. And here I'm going to add a new path, and that's going to be c colon backslash ngrok backslash, with this, which is the path where I have installed, which is this path here, which is the path where I have installed ngrok. Again, what that means is that now I can open any terminal from any folder and then type ngrok, and the system will be recognized as a agent, as a command that I have accessible anywhere in any terminal. Great. And then the last thing we're going to do is, now that we have ngrok perfectly configured, I'm going to use it to tunnel. This little local server that is running on port 64290, and to create this third-party URL from the tunneling that is going to allow external access from the internet, from the cloud, into my local service. The way you do that with ngrok is you type ngrok, then you type HTTP as the protocol that you want to tunnel, and then you type the port that you want to forward into this machine. So in that case, it's going to be 64290. And the moment I do that, all of a sudden, I'm going to detach this window. All of a sudden, now I have this service running locally. I have an ngrok tunnel running on this machine, and ngrok has provided me with this temporary URL that I can copy and that I can share with my friends, my family across the globe, etc. And if I paste it on any browser in the world now, then this would give you cloud access to the local server that is running on my machine. You can see that here we got the request, and here also we got a feedback, we got an entry for that request. If you were watching live right now, you could be accessing my little web server from this URL, which you will not, because you're going to watch this in the future and I will have turned off this service on my machine. Okay, beautiful. ngrok is great. It's also great for development. It's also great for really quick creating tunnels. I think it's a better service than Visual Studio Code. And at the same time, if you set up a premium account and you pay some money, etc., the URLs that you can create are more permanent, and you can customize the naming of the URL, and you can do more fancy stuff, if you will. Okay, so if you're looking for more permanent solutions, ngrok is definitely something that you want to take a look at. All right, and I'm not sure if the free service actually expires and has to reset every so and then. I'm not exactly sure about that. The last service that I would like to show you is doing the exact same thing, but we're going to do it with Cloudflare instead. Cloudflare is a fairly similar company to ngrok. They provide network infrastructure services. They're very well known for being the leaders in security on the internet, protection. A lot of the captchas that you're going to see online are actually provided by Cloudflare. They also have a very interesting service for random number generators that are based on these lava lamps that they have on the on a wall at the headquarters of the. Anyway, it's a very interesting company, and they've been growing a lot lately. Most of the security infrastructure of the internet is actually based on their products. So I like this company a lot in particular, and that's why I wanted to present it today. I don't get any money or any sponsorship from them. It's literally just sheer interest in the company. And they also provide tunneling services very similar to ngrok. So you can create an account, and then by creating an account, you will end up in some kind of dashboard like this, where you can actually do domain registration and have your domains point to different services, etc., etc. And actually, in a further video down the line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little domain, and I'm going to make that domain point to an Ollama deployment on my machine and be able to create like a ChatGPT like interface for an LLM living in my computer. Okay, so whenever that video is ready, it will be showing up as a card here on the corner of the screen. Okay, so what do we do? Well, the first thing that we need to do is, in order to have Cloudflare as a service to create tunneling, we have to do a very similar thing to what we did with ngrok, which is to download a small agent, install it on our machine, make it accessible anywhere from the terminal, and then run it. Okay, so the way we do that is, I actually never know what it is, so I'm going to go Cloudflare downloads, and you can see the download Cloudflare Zero Trust. This is the place where you want to be. All right, so what you got to do is to install the lightweight server-side daemon called Cloudflare. All right, and then I'm going to also do it manually for my Windows machine. So in my Windows, instead of using any packet manager, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the executable, the 64-bit. I'm going to download it to my desktop. All right, and then I'm going to do a very similar thing. I'm going to go to my hard drive, to my main. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Cloudflare. All right, and then I'm going to take the file that I downloaded from the internet, and I'm going to rename it to Cloudflare, so that it's a little easier to type. And then I'm going to right click on my PC, properties, environment variables, edit your environment variables. I'm going to go all the way down to path, and then I'm going to add a new entry here that is going to be C colon backslash Cloudflare, if I spelled this correctly, Cloudflare, and Cloudflare, okay, and okay. And I actually just noticed that there was a typo here, Cloudflare. All right, so let's see if it works. So if I open a new terminal and I type Cloudflare, I should get something. Sorry, it was Cloudflared. All right, so I should get something. Do I get something? Come on, come on, come on. Oh no, yes, because this doesn't have a service on its own. And now we just have to create the tunneling using the command line terminal. So for example, that I believe it's Cloudflare dot, I never remember this, tunnel slash URL, and then which direction you are pointing to. So that's going to be http:// localhost, and then colon and the port of the service that we are running. The moment I do that, it's going to connect to Cloudflare, it's going to request a temporary URL, and you can see that this is the URL that we now can use for the tunnel. All right, so if I paste this on my browser, and if I had this service running right now as well, in your future view of this video, you would also be able to access this URL from anywhere in the world and access my service. The advantage of Cloudflare is the URL is a bit more user-friendly, so it's basically a bunch of random words, alter front centers mark dot try Cloudflare, whatever. And the disadvantage, though, is that the information that you get on the terminal in terms of the usage and the connections is a little poorer than the one that you get from ngrok. However, the customization possibilities are a little better, I think, on Cloudflare, and you can customize your own domains. You can buy domains here and have subdomains point to local services. I like it a little bit more as a general service, in my opinion. Okay, so beautiful. So I think with that, that's all I wanted to cover. So if you thought this was interesting, maybe like this video, share it with your friends, follow the channel, those things. And if you want to learn more, there will be more videos coming up on how to use tunneling to provide access to local services. In particular, I'm going to try very soon how to provide services for how to provide access to the Ollama API locally from the cloud, and how to connect a web interface for Ollama, also using tunneling in the cloud. Okay, so those videos will be either popping up as cards or will be linked in the description of this video. Until then, thank you very much and see you around. Bye bye.